Good morning. Good morning to everyone out there who's watching this morning's live show. I hope you are doing well. Glad you could be here with us this morning. Good morning, Kitaku. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I hope you are doing well today. Start of the weekend. Got any exciting plans this weekend? Going to a monster truck rally, car show, hanging out with the kids? What do you have planned? Doing nothing is also, a good idea too. Good morning, Mike Stevens. Ala Akapar. Good morning, Francie. Welcome to this morning's Page 2 News, the rebirth and reimagination of Page 2 News. People may like it, people may hate it, but it's back. We are watching Tales from the Crypt. I always love that laugh of the Crypt Keeper. It's a great show. Scary movies over here too. Well, that's a great way to spend the day. But if you have some time, get outside, go for a walk. Never know what you can imagine and what you can see while taking a walk. I do it every night. Go for a walk. Got to get out and do something. You can't just sit, and be sedentary. All right. Well, we're going to get this going, ladies and gentlemen. This is Page 2 News. Now with 2.3% less static and more control. Yes. The morning show and crime recap strictly adheres to verified factual evidence. All information presented in the sources from reputable agencies such as the FBI, Department of Justice, and whenever applicable, Scotland Yard. And I might add, this will change next week to Scotland Yard and Interpol. I know that a lot of people have questioned, why does it not say Interpol? Interpol is the cross borders investigation loop, but Scotland Yard only deals with crimes in the UK. And that's true. So I will be adding Interpol in there with Scotland Yard whenever applicable. Do not engage in conspiracy theory, speculation, or unverified claims about what may have occurred. If you are looking for that type of content, this program will not be the right fit for you. Thank you for your understanding and have a great day. I was never a horror movie fan, says Mike Stevens. I am more of a Lifetime movie buff. There's some good Lifetime movies as well, Mike. Like The Burning Bed. That's a tragic case. It was based on a true story, but that's a good one. It is 100% free to subscribe and 100% free to learn new facts about criminals. Additionally, 100% free to be part of this community and 100% free to play live trivia every single Sunday. What reason do you have to not subscribe? Shout out to last week's supporters of this channel and content. Gemma, Super Chat, Scott B Investigation Fund, and a shout out on his YouTube channel. Gabby R, donation to the Investigation Fund, and B Stephanie purchased a super sticker last week. Also, a huge shout out again to Scott B for helping me with technical issues I was having with playing live videos in streams. Thank you again, Scott B, if you are listening this morning. First one today, new business is where is Dennis Rader now? Inside the BTK life today, decades after admitting to murdering 10 people. Dennis Rader is still making headlines from behind the bars. The serial killer known as the Bind, Torture, Kill BTK killer has continued to arouse investigation suspicions in several cold cases since his 2005 arrest. Rader, who killed at least 10 victims over the span of 3 decades, per the New York Times, famously taunted police with his crimes through letters to law enforcement and to the media for 5 years from 1974 to 1979. When his communication ceased, he resurfaced in the public eye in 2004 after 25 years of silence. And less than a year later, he was arrested. Now, Rader is a subject of a 2025 documentary called My Father, the BTK Killer, which premieres on Netflix back October 10th of this year. So today is the 18th. That was 8 days ago. You can go onto Netflix and watch that right now. My Father, the BTK Killer, which and features interviews with his daughter Carrie Rawson. Rader also shares son Brian Rader with his ex-wife Paula Diaz. The man I knew could be good and decent, Rawson told People in January of 2019. I'm not forgiving him for what he did to those families, but I'm forgiving him for what he did to our family. So where is Dennis Rader today? Well, here's everything we know about what's happened to the man known as the BTK killer since the 2005 arrest. In the 2025 documentary, Rawson reveals that she has visited her father after 18 years with several investigators. According to the serial killer's daughter, author, and visited lasted several hours, during which she asked him if he had committed any other murders and expressed her feelings of rage over the crimes. It was like I wasn't even like I was talking to my dad. Yeah, I'm reading it just how it is. It was like I was talking to a subhuman, she said. I don't ever want to go anywhere near that person again. That's not my dad. I don't know who that is. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, is incarcerated in the El Dorado Correction Facility in El Dorado, Kansas. He has been there since August of 2005 after pleading guilty to 10 counts of first-degree murder.
Dennis Lynn Rader, better known as the BTK Killer, is an American serial killer who murdered at least 10 people in Wichita and Park City, Kansas between 1974 and 1991. His victims were often attacked in their home, then bound, sometimes with objects from their homes, or suffocated using a plastic bag or manual strangulation.
Next, Brian Kohlberger took a plea deal days after learning his sister was on the prosecution's witness list. Amongst the more than 180 potential witnesses whom prosecutors might have called to testify in the trial were surviving roommates Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, and victims Ethan Chaplin's triplet brother and sister, Hunter and Mazzy Chapin. Chapin. Those two siblings were the only immediate family members of any of the victims who were set to testify, likely because they were both at the scene on the morning the victims' 4 bodies were discovered. In the wake of Kohlberg's accepting the deal with prosecutors that saw him plead guilty to 4 counts of murder to avoid execution, Stacy Chapin, the mother of Ethan and the triplets, said that she was relieved her children and the surviving roommates would no longer be required to testify and relieve their painful memories of that day. In addition to the list of witnesses prosecutors plan to call during the guilty phase of the trial, Judge Hippler also unsealed the list of witnesses the defense planned to call during the mitigation phase of the trial. Kohlberg's sister would have potentially been pulled double duty, as her name also appears on her brother's witness list. Amanda is one of 56 individuals the defense planned to possibly call in order to provide testimony that might reduce Kohlberg's culpability in the murders of Chapin, Alexander Kernudel, Kaylin Conclave, and Madison Mogan. The other names on the list included Kohlberg's sister, Melissa, his parents, Michael and Marianne, and Washington State University professor John Snyder. Kohlberg worked as a teacher's assistant for Snyder at WSU, that's Washington State University. His inclusion on the list is a bit surprising. However, as Snyder complained about Kohlberg after a verbal altercation between the pair, which resulted in the criminology department issuing Kohlberg a warning about his conduct. Brian Kohlberg is located about 9 miles south of Boise, Idaho. The facility is Idaho's only maximum security prison and houses some of the state's most disruptive male residents. Kohlberg's listed on the IDOC website confirms he is in J Block in the state penitentiary. Also to note that Chad Daybell is also in the same prison, but is not on in or anywhere near the J Block. He has been moved twice, Chad Daybell has, in the actual Department of Corrections, according to the IDOC's website. He is not in the J Block, so they are not near each other, nor can they communicate with each other unless they pass notes through other inmates to each other. And they don't know each other, so there's no reason why Chad would want to reach out to Kohlberg. Wasted days and wasted nights amounts to a wasted life. Florida executes convicted killer. Florida executes male convicted beating, strangling 2 women whose bodies were found in a pond. A man convicted of killing 2 women whose bodies were found in a rural pond in 1996 was put to death Tuesday evening. 14th execution this year in Florida. 14, several more to go. There will be at least 2 more before the end of the year. Samuel Lee Smithers, 72, was pronounced dead at 6:15 p.m. following a lethal injection at the Florida State Prison near Stark, the office of Governor Ron DeSantis said. Smithers was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death back in 1999. When asked if he had a final statement, Smithers says, "No, sir. according to DeSantis spokesman Alexander Lanfranconi. He said there were no complications to the inmates being put to death. Smithers' death sentence extends to the total executions in a single year, with the state planning to carry out 2 more executions later this month and next. Again, they have a total of 5 that they want to execute, but they're definitely going to get to the 2 other ones this year. That will bring their total to 16 for the year of 2025. Since the U.S. Supreme Court restored the death penalty in 1976, the highest previous annual total for Florida was 8 in 2014. Florida has executed more people than any other state this year, followed by Texas with 5. I know. We're all surprised by that fact right there, aren't we? That the state of Texas is playing second fiddle in the amount of people that they have executed. Because Texas, if they could allow electric bleachers, they would just line up 20 inmates on a set of bleachers and electrocute them all at the same time. I kid about that and I make light of it only because Texas has always been the #1 state that has used the death penalty more than any other state. But this year they've only executed 5, and Florida is going to end up with 16. Wanted by the U.S. Marshals and FBI. Today's wanted fugitive by the FBI and the U.S. Marshals Office is Aaron Williams. He is wanted for murder, alias Jesus Rivera and Aaron Williams. But Aaron Williams is his name, his legal name, but he actually goes by, as an alias. He spells it differently. His full name is Darnell Aaron Williams. Date of birth is June 4th, 1980. He is a male with brown eyes, 160 pounds in weight, and wanted out of El Paso, Texas. Race and ethnicity is a black African American. Black hair, 5'9", with a tattoo on his back. Aaron Williams is also fluent in Spanish and a member of the gang of the Disciples. Again, Aaron Williams could be anywhere in the United States. He has connections to all of the following locations in the United States where there are members of the Disciple gang, and he has family members in. The following places he could be, or he could be, again, anywhere. But on the west coast of the United States, Los Angeles, California, the Sacramento Valley area in California, along with LA. Going up the coast to Oregon, Portland, Oregon, and in Vancouver, Washington, just across the bridge. He has family and gang members of the Disciple gang. Then there are members of the Disciple gang in the Seattle and Spokane area in Washington State. Why am I only telling you about the west coast of the United States? Because of the Disciple gangs and his family members. Yes, he has other family members across the United States, Detroit, Michigan. There are members of his family in Florida, but he's most likely somewhere in the United States on the west coast of the U.S. If you know anything about where Aaron Williams is, you can reach out to 1-800-307-9100, and you can remain anonymous, or you can go and click on that link there to FBI.gov tips, and you can remain anonymous by leaving an actual message there. You can also leave a text message on there, but you do have to put in your phone number. Serial Killer Corner. The monsters we seek to uncover do not hide in the dark corners. They hide right next to us all every day. Samuel Little may not be new to you. However, the FBI has updated his case file on the killer this past week. And you can click on that link and read the newest update. According to the FBI, they have now moved Samuel Little's murder count from 94 to officially 96 individuals. And there are still more investigations ongoing, but they are now officially calling his kill count at 96. but that has been updated along with some of photos and information about other potential victims. Again, you can click on that FBI.gov link and read more about Samuel Little. World news. Do you know what's really going on? 100% of these are factual news stories with over 10 independent sources. Don't hate the messenger, hate what's really going on. And I stress that. You may not agree with what is I'm about to show you or tell you, but these are all independently, verified with at least 10 sources. President Donald Trump, along with other world leaders who signed the peace agreement, had no direct involvement in the peace agreement between Hamas and Israel. Their participation was largely ceremonial, intended to give the appearance of diplomatic influence. The United States and other nations bear no responsibility for the eventual breakdown of the agreement, an outcome that, given the region's history, remains a distinct possibility. When it came to the peace agreement between Hamas and Israel, it was only Hamas and Israel that sat down and worked out the agreement. The other 8 nations who signed the peace deal, again, I cannot stress this enough, it was largely a ceremonial intent to show that they were helping. Yeah, they may have talked to both sides, but they had no real, breakdown or influence in what they agreed to, the ceasefire or anything else. And that is a fact. Additional things that you need to know. 72% believe the Department of Justice and the FBI has been weaponized against other political parties. 2.8 million people were polled for these results. 2.8 million Americans. 77% of those who responded to the polls do not support deployment of the National Guard or active duty forces to combat crime. Even though we are seeing it all across the nation, they do not believe that the National Guard or active military should be deployed to fight crime. That the people who signed up to be in the military did not sign up to be, law enforcement in any area. They are there to do our bidding for us in other nations, wars, and conflicts around the world, but not to be deployed to fight crime. 73%, again, on the same polls, believe the Epstein file, if ever released, has already been altered. 73%. Additionally, 61% of those who answered, the 2.8 million Americans, have no idea what habeas corpus is or who habeas corpus is. Hint, it's in the U.S. Constitution. Habeas corpus is a legal procedure in which a person can challenge the legality of their detention. Note the asterisk. Before a judge, by filing a writ of habeas corpus, Latin for "you have the body," it serves as a fundamental check against unlawful imprisonment by requiring that a prisoner be brought before a court and that the government provide a valid reason for their detention. Function and purpose. A court reviews the lawfulness of a person's confinement, not their guilty or innocence underneath a habeas corpus filing. It is a legal safeguard to prevent arbitrary or illegal imprisonment by ensuring a person is not held without sufficient cause. The U.S. Constitution guarantees the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. Only Congress, not the president, has the authority to suspend habeas corpus under Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution. Prohibits the suspension of habeas corpus in other cases. Back to the asterisk underneath detention. Detention is clearly defined legal concept. The United States Supreme Court has affirmed in numerous decisions, exceeding 4 dozen cases. That at any time law enforcement restricts an individual's freedom of movement or prevents them from leaving a specific area, that individual is considered to be detained under arrest under the law, detained or under arrest. These legal protections extend to all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States, including citizens, non-citizens, and foreign nationals. Again, you cannot restrict the movement of an individual and without due cause. They must tell you why they are restricting your ability to leave. And if they do, you are considered to being detained or under arrest. Overwhelmingly rejected. The U.S. news organizations, including traditional and conservative outlets like the New York Times, the Associated Press, Fox News, Newsmax, have all rejected the Pentagon's new policy that Pete Hegseth is requiring, that Donald Trump has demanded all journalists to agree to sign by October 15th. That was of 3 days ago. That would put new restrictions in place, which would infringe and threaten freedom of the press and everyone's First Amendment rights. If they don't, they will lose their credentials, their press credentials, and will be forbidden from any future Pentagon news briefing. That's some scary shit right there, folks. While you were asleep and not paying attention, that's what Pete Hegseth and the President of the United States wanted the news organizations out there to do. Not only would it violate our First Amendment rights and the freedom of the press, that would directly affect those who do work like I do, bringing you the facts and news stories from around the world, and particularly here in the United States. Because what they wanted them to do was sign an agreement that said they would never report on anything that the U.S. government and the military is doing unless it came directly from what they released as information. No more digging into possible corruption. No more looking into what they were doing and how they were deploying, our Navy ships or our airplanes, like off the coast of Venezuela. They sent 3 U.S. bombers to Venezuela yesterday. They wouldn't be able to report that because the Pentagon did not officially release that information. Until they did, they want them to say, nope, no more reporting on anything at all unless we tell you you can report on it. And that, again, would be a violation of all of our First Amendment rights and would trample on the freedom of the press, which we all strongly need more today than any other time in history. We need the freedom of the press. Tomorrow night's trivia is on Yvonne Keller. Yvonne Keller, the serial killer from France, Switzerland, and Germany. Yes, I know that this individual is not from someone, a list of American serial killers that we would all know, but it was suggested by a viewer. And that's the type of trivia that we cover. Viewer suggested topics. What could Sister say that would help him avoid justice? That he was a good brother? They weren't trying to avoid justice, Mike. Mitigate the total sentence is why they wanted to possibly put his 2 sisters and his mother and his father on the stand to mitigate the total amount of the sentence. Now, what's interesting about Brian Kohlberger's sister on there is his sister Amanda, not Michelle, but Amanda particularly, he was very close to. And there's a chance, the reason why the prosecutors had their Amanda on the witness list is he may have said something to her when he left Washington State and went back home, where she was at the time. So he may have said something to her about the crime or about how he was acting, that she could have testified about that. But yeah, he's always been closer with Amanda than Michelle. I'll write that down, Mike. VILLISCA, Iowa. 1912 axe murders. Thank you for the suggestion, Mike. Has anyone listened to the new Gacy Tapes podcast? No, I wasn't aware there was a new one, Kitty Q. I was not aware of Gacy tapes. Those that were his attorney recorded, or are we talking about the interview and the tapes that that Robert Ressler, the FBI did? I'm not familiar with it, Kitty Goose. So please, understand my ignorance in that. I've listened and watched several of the videos on the Gacy interviews over time that he did with Robert Ressler. Yes, and thank you very much for being a channel member, Gemma. I appreciate it. 31 months. Bob Mota Jr. Did a whole show. Crazy Eye Detective Murderer. Watched Defense Diaries live last night. Is that Bob Mota that does the Detective Diaries, Kitty Q? I'm asking for the people out there. There might be people who don't know. I watch a lot of the interviews of Death Row in interviews. I mean, you might as well say the last thing you're going to say before they put that needle in your arm or strap those electrodes to you. I'm working on my family history and booking myself some more day coach trips. That's cool. So Bob Mota Jr. Was Gacy's lawyer. So they're the Gacy attorney's notes. Now, I Kitty Q, I hope I'm not wrong about this, but I do believe that he recorded all of those interviews with Gacy, and then they got put away. And then was it Bob Mota would be like the second, his son? Isn't that who found the tapes later on and then started releasing them? So maybe it's Bob Mota Jr. and it was Senior who was the attorney. I just remember something about the all the interviews with Gacy that got put away and forgotten about for years. They sat on a shelf, cassette tapes of the conversations with him. I've always felt Gacy wasn't alone in his murders. Interesting take, Mike. I don't know about that. Gacy, he loved to play games, and once he got his victim, subdued, there wasn't any chance that they were ever going to walk away. They were going to die. Drugs, alcohol, sedatives, and then he did that magic rope trick, with them, and that automatically subdued their hands together so they couldn't, fight off, an attack from him. Not that there's anything wrong with it, what I'm about to say, so I just want to put that out there first. Whatever lifestyle anyone out there that's listening or watching this has, that's your life. You live your life however you want. But John Wayne Gacy was definitely a closeted homosexual because in every one of the individuals, let's just say he had his fun with them, alive and dead. And every one of them, oddly, a lot of people don't know this, but he put brand new underwear on the individuals after he had the fun with them and before he buried them. That every one of his victims got a brand new pair of underwear. Why? That's a little crazy. Then again, you're John Wayne Gacy. Gacy was definitely one twisted son of a thing. But don't forget, I mean, from a young little kid, his dad verbally and physically abused him. Then his uncle, abused him, and he was sexually abused. All of this plays into the story of who Gacy, later became. There are a lot of things in his history in the background. None of it should ever be the reason, why he did it. It's like, well, you were abused, and you're physically, mentally, and sexually. So I guess it's all right for you to kill. No. It was never okay for him to kill or do what he did. Just, you have to know and look at the whole story of who Gacy was. Reichardt! Good morning, Reichardt. I hope you are doing well this morning, Reichardt. Where in the world is Reichardt? It's kind of like, where is Carmen Sandiego? Where is Reichardt? Somewhere on the roads of America, I'm guessing. Accused of murdering her 5 children. Ooh. $35 charged over the death of her 5 children. She's 35 years old. And thank you, Gemma, for posting those links. I will definitely, take a look at them later on. Will read these after your stream. It's about an autistic boy here in the UK who was murdered by his mom. Maybe you could cover it. I will try. I will say, this when it comes to doing international crimes, Gemma, like tomorrow night's trivia subject matter on Yvonne Keller. It is extraordinarily harder to do research across the border, across the outside of the United States. A lot of countries restrict access or make it more difficult, especially if you don't know the ins and outs of how to get the information. It's hidden. It's not like here in America where if a crime is committed here, you've got your local police department will have a blog about it. You'll have your court records of the arrest and the arraignment. Then you'll have conviction, a blurb about the conviction of an individual. So you have all these different things where you can find information about it in an actual crime or criminal. But in the UK and Ireland and other countries that try to do research on, they don't necessarily print every single individual who's arrested and who goes through the different legal processes before they're convicted. So it's a lot harder. And I understand it's even harder for people who are like in your situation in the UK, to try to do research on things that are happening right there in your own country. The freedom of the press, again, is more important than ever around the world, not just in the United States. We have to have the freedom of the press. And when we start letting people restrict access to, the press, and restrict the press from being able to investigate things, that's a slippery slope nobody here ever wants to go down. No one in the world do we ever want to see that happening. Tomorrow, if you lose the freedom of the press, then you might as well lose the freedom of religion. Then once you lose the freedom of religion and the freedom of the press, what do you have? we already know it's easy to take away constitutional and rights and amendments here in the United States. We've done that in the eyes of justice and for safety, particularly after the 9/11 attacks, and the for doing it for security reasons. Well, underneath the Enemies Act, we can do whatever we want, and the government has in a lot of ways, and that's scary. We got to wake the hell up and look at what's happening around us, because if we don't pay attention and we don't start fighting back, what are you going to have? What was this country founded on? Freedom of religion and expression, freedom to live your life, and less government. Yeah, that's why we were here. We moved here from the UK and from around the world, our huddled masses, because we wanted those freedoms, and they're eroding them slowly here by piece here and a piece there and a piece there. And I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on, because even Newsmax and Fox News and the New York Times, everybody has come out, against what Hegseth and Trump wanted to do. And that's good. And we need more of that. More people to stand up and question, why would you want to do this? What is the long play here? And what is the outcome? 9/11 and COVID. COVID was an unmitigated disaster, Mike. The closure never should have happened. And we all got freaking snowed on it. We got snowed. Yes, in the beginning, we needed to have some types of restrictions. But to tell people you can't go outdoors, you can't go to golf. I couldn't golf. They wouldn't let us on the golf course because we would be too close to each other. I'm outdoors. Closing everything. Human beings were never meant to be, closed in and stay indoors all the time. And that was absolutely terrible. And a lot of things during COVID, we're going to be seeing the fallout from for years and years to come. We're just now starting to see the beginnings of it. Because remember, during COVID and the closure here in America, people who, they lost their support networks. Those who, were going to, psychiatric, appointments, they lost connections, with their doctors. They couldn't get their medication. Those who, were in recovery from alcohol and drug addiction, they couldn't go to meetings. They couldn't have that support network to stay on the right line. And then we just made it worse and worse and worse. And then to make it, because we didn't have enough of a fire, burning, our country apart, we started shoveling billions of dollars on top of it. Anybody who wanted a PPP loan, we just handed out that money with no questions asked. Just yes, just threw more and more money and everything on the fire. And now they're starting to convict people. Well, they have been all along, but they're really looking into all these loans and everything else that people got and that were fraudulent. People bought Ferraris with the money that was supposed to keep people on payrolls. But we're human, though. People make mistakes. Yeah, even if we have good intentions, we definitely screwed that one up. We have to get political because those idiot politicians are affecting our lives. I agree with you, Reichart. Yes, they are politicians who are ruining our lives. But there's a lot of things in it's not just necessarily politics too. People are doing it for their own altruistic reasons. So the economy sucks. Only the rich are benefiting. We've got more billionaires in America than we have ever had at any other time in history. During during the Gilded Age or whatever, the Roaring 20s and everything else, in 30s, with the Rockefellers and like families like that, the filthy rich. We have 16 times the amount of billionaires today than we did back then. 16 times. That's bad, because the discrepancy between the rich and the super rich and the working class is more of a divide today than ever before. Yeah, they're not making my life any easier. They're not making your life any easier. Poor working stiffs. Why are we doing this? Why do we keep on working? I don't know. Wasn't it weird when the government sent us all big checks? Or did I dream that? I remember getting a COVID relief check. I think it was like $1,500, which was nothing compared to the amount of work and loss of income that I had to deal with. Because I could have sat here in my studio and just rehashed the news every single day, but doing that would been an injustice to you, the viewer, and subscriber out there, at the same time. But because I a lot of my work, and what I do here in research and behind these stories, and cases that I cover, I have to leave from here, and I have to go to, the library to maybe look things up on, an archives file, or I have to go to a courthouse, or I have to file, Freedom of Information Act request, which none of that stuff was happening at all. I mean, all the courts were closed too during the closure. So I couldn't go there. Hell, my friend who was a judge, he sat at home for almost 5 months. And he's like, while they kept on arresting people and the docket just kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, there were no judges to actually hear the cases, to move them on during that part, and then they started to do cases by Zoom, and like things like that. But that was only like a band-aid on the situation. It got bad, real bad. A lot of backlog, a lot of injustice was happening. Nazis are running the White House. I don't know if Nazis are running the White House, Reichart, but there definitely are some Nazis in Congress. That definitely. I mean, we just saw, just the other day, House of in Congress, one of their representatives, like understudies, he had a Nazi flag on the wall behind him, and he did. Now their Fox News' version of the story was, "I'm not kidding you. This is real." They said the flag with the Nazi emblem in it was an American flag with the red and white that formed an actual Nazi symbol in the middle of the flag. They said it was one of those flags that you looked at with your own human eyes, and it was one thing. But once you put it on television, that's when the swastika appeared. But at the same time, the people who were handing out these Nazi flags were handing them out, and a lot of them people just threw them away or didn't want them. But he pinned that to the back of the wall. That was what, the Young Republican or Young Republicans, something like that. There's like 40 total members of it. That's small compared to the total members of representatives in Congress, and they're those who work underneath them. They're and stuff. So there maybe about 500-600, and you got 40. There's always going to be racism. I hate to break the bad news to anyone out there. There's always going to be it. We can do as much as we can to educate and to combat it, but there's always going to be those people out there that are racist. And I'm always reminded of the fact, George Carlin always said, there's no reason to be a racist. There's a perfectly good reason to hate people on an individual basis. True words from George Carlin. Well, you still have freedoms, Gemma. They're just restricted. They're not as free as they are here. But we're going down that slippery slope, though. And if people don't put the brakes on, it's going to get a lot worse. A lot worse. So many people are, watching what's happening out there on the political landscape, and they're like, I'm just one person. What can I do? You may not be able to affect what's happening in Congress or in the House of Representatives right now, but you can start right here today on the ground level until they deploy, the National Guard and active, duty Marines to stop you. But you can speak up and do something right now while you still have, the ability to, because if you don't, you're not going to have it very long. That's some seriously scary shit. And I'm sorry for my language, but that is seriously scary to make, the all of and every single independent news outlet, media outlet out there sign an agreement that you will not talk about anything unless we officially release it. And you will not investigate it unless we officially release it. That is some serious, like scary stuff, when you think about how much of our lives, that would affect in different areas. They're already trying to do away with, the one side that wants to keep these news channels and let's get rid of all these people, who are opposing voices. That's scary, and we've been watching that happen. I mean, I've never been a fan of Jimmy Kimmel, but and what he really did say about, Kirk was blown way out of proportion. He never once, laughed or made light of the fact that he was murdered, that Kirk was murdered. But the internet, leave it to the internet because it's good for everything, right? They blew it way out of proportion. Racism will end once we are all the same color. Don't know then, Francie, even if we were all the same color. We would have to be all the same color. We would have to be all the same, have all the same personal identity. We'd identify the same way. We would all have to be Christian. We would all have to be, of one political agenda. We would all have to be, all of the same, on top of being the same color, because otherwise, and even then, people are going to hate that person, and they're going to be racist against people because they're shorter or taller, even if we were all the same color and we're all of the same ideology. That's why racism will never end. And you can do everything you can, like the United States, here in the Justice Department and the FBI, we did so much to, to do away with the Ku Klux Klan, and the Aryan Nation and these brotherhoods and stuff like that. We arrested them and we threw them into jail. So they splintered off into new groups inside the prison system. Now they're coming out of prison because 97% of them eventually get out of prison. And what did that do? They just decided, what? Instead of wearing white robes, with pointy little stupid hats, we'll dress up in polos, and carry tiki torches like they did in Atlanta. They look just like everybody else. Before, when at least we're able to say, look, they have a Dixie flag, and they got a cross burning going on. We know who they are. But now they dress just like you and me and everybody else out there. And they were pushed underground, and they decided we can recruit more, we can make more money, and we can have more success if we put people in power in politics, and we just look like everybody else, and we move our agenda along, along how everybody else is moving their agenda. We just do it the opposite direction. They want inclusion, we want exclusion. That's the world we live in. And the internet, I mean, I don't have to tell you guys. I mean, if you don't have to search very hard to find racist, bigoted content on YouTube. It is everywhere if you just look for it. Trump's not perfect, but he's better than Biden. I don't know, Mike. I don't think either one of them were any good. But I mean, I don't vote down party lines. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm not an independent. I vote for the person that I believe will do the best job. If that means that the president, if the person, who's on the ballot for the president, maybe they'll do the best job, but maybe I should have the right to vote who I think is going to be the vice president. It shouldn't be that the president picks, their political running mate. We used to do it where, it's like, hey, here's the president, and whoever came in second for president was the vice president. Why can't we do that again? Why do we still have the electoral college? The electoral college was set up in place, when most people didn't have access to information, and most people were illiterate. That's why we have it. Why don't we still have it today in 2025? Do away with the electoral college and popular vote only is how we should elect presidents. You can win the popular vote by a massive margin. It doesn't mean that the electoral college is going to vote that way for you, and for your constituents in your area. They can say, we're going to go the opposite direction, and they can, and they do. But back to Biden or Trump, I don't think either one of them are the right person. And don't get me started on Harris. I can't stand people that, they blame everything else and everyone else for their shortcomings. The pity party people. I'm not going to vote for that. Good morning. Something to talk about. Broken justice. Good morning. And Amelia, good morning as well. I hate to break the bad news to you both, but here in a little bit, I'm going to be rounding finishing up today's page 2 news. Hillary won the popular vote. Hillary, oh my God. Can't we just bury them already? Both her and Bill? Just dig a hole and put them both in it? It's a joke. I couldn't stand Bill and I couldn't stand Hillary. Secretary of State, just because of the mistakes that she made as Secretary of the State, I never would have voted for that lady. And I don't give a crap about, missing emails or anything else. I don't care about that at all. Just what she did when she was Secretary of State was more than enough reason to not ever, and the Democratic Party should have never put her on the ticket just because of what she did as Secretary of State. Leave it at that. It is. It is alarming, Francie. I'll help dig the hole. Thank you, Amelia. Talking about true crime, Prince Andrew has officially had all titles removed. He gave them up, didn't he? Gemma? Didn't he give up all his titles and everything else because of the ongoing scandals? We know that that Prince Andrew is in the Epstein file. I mean, that's a given. Who else is in there? There's a lot of people that are rumored to be in there. I would not be surprised at all if if they ever do release it and it's not already altered. You're going to find actors in there like Kevin Spacey. It's definitely going to I mean we know that he visited Epstein at not only his Florida home, at his New York, and he also Kevin Spacey also went to the ranch he had. What was it, in New Mexico? I think it was. I can't remember what state the ranch was at. But We know Spacey went to these places. Yeah, because he admitted to it. So I would not be surprised at all if he went to Epstein's Island. After King Charles had a meeting with him, gave up everything, like on the presidential level. Yep. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap up page 2 news. This is just the start of page 2 news, the rebirth and reimagination of it. Each week, as we go along, you're going to see slight little tweaks and features that are added to it in the coming weeks ahead. But if you liked, this morning's page 2 news, give this a thumbs up. If you're watching this afterwards, give it, leave a comment. I appreciate it. It just helps a little bit for the algorithm to push it out to other people who may enjoy it. But in the meantime, everyone have a great, day today. And if I see you tomorrow, I hope to, for trivia night. It's on Yvonne Keller, the serial killer from France. He killed in France, Switzerland, and Germany. So Yvonne Keller is tomorrow night's trivia subject. So I hope to see you all there. In the meantime, you take care and have a pleasant day today. And don't forget, you never know who's going to be standing next to you next, and you never know who's going to be knocking at your door, as Purple likes to point out. And thank you very much. I hope you are having a great day if you watch this later on, Purple. To everyone, bye.